Today we're going to take a closer look at the latest new dual sport motorcycle to be released from Honda, the XR150L. It's got a lot of hype behind it right now, and for good reason, as it's not often you see a new street legal bike released that gets 124 miles per gallon for less than $3,000, and today we're going to dive into everything you need to know about it, and some of it is not all roses and sunshine. Before we do that though, if you find my content helpful and or enjoy it, I know that last part is a stretch there, but if you'd like to help keep these videos coming, please consider checking out the join button below and some of these support links down in the description that also include discount codes for parts and accessories, which helps to keep this train chugging along, as without your support, my days are numbered. Now, with that being said, let us begin. And first up, let's take a look at options when buying a new Honda XR150L. Do you have any? Well, surprisingly, you do. Unlike countless models that only have one color choice, with the XR you've got black or white to choose from, but if that doesn't float your boat and you don't mind a little legwork, it's offered in different colors overseas, so you could easily order the plastics and swap them out. Next up, let's get into the chassis and suspension. The XR150L is sporting a steel frame, and if I'm being honest here, it's one of the places you can tell where some pennies were saved. Now, I'm not saying they're bad welds, but yeah, they could do a better job on cleaning these up a bit, but what do you guys think? Back on topic though, that steel chassis helps the XR tip these scales at 252 pounds, and for comparison's sake, here's how that stacks up against some other dual sport motorcycles in the model lineup. Yeah, it's definitely not the lightest in the world, but when you factor in its low seat height of 32.8 inches, it opens up the door for a lot of vertically challenged people, as more and more of these dual sport motorcycles end up being way too high for a lot of people, and that's where this little guy in the new low seat version of the CRF300L really shine. When it comes to ground clearance, it's right at 9.6 inches, and keep in mind, before you start getting too aggressive out there, you don't have a skid plate from the factory, but that's available as an accessory from Honda, and we'll dive more into those shortly. Now, when it comes to suspension, up front you've got a 31mm conventional fork setup, but are they adjustable?
You know better than that.
No adjustability is par for the course though on these cheap motorcycles, so we can't really be surprised there, and this fork brings in 7.1 inches of travel, while out back you've got a single shock setup with Honda's ProLink design, and you do have preload adjustability to try and help dial it in for your style of riding. And wait, then we've got what's working with the suspension to help smooth out the ride, and that moves us over to the wheels, where it's sporting a 19-inch wheel up front to help roll over those obstacles off-road, and a 17-inch wheel in the rear. Wrapped around those, you've got a set of tube-type tires with a 90x90 up front and a 110x90 out back from CST that are definitely more geared for the street, but they can handle some light off-road action as well. Now, wheels and tires aren't that important if you can't stop them, and that leads us over to the brakes. Up front, you've got a disc brake setup with a 240mm rotor and a 2-piston caliper binding down on it, and for those that are into all of the latest safety equipment, ABS is not available on the XR150L, which among other things that we'll be diving into shortly, definitely limits some of the countries it can be sold in around the world. While in the rear, we take a trip back to the 1800s for a 110mm drum brake as another way to help keep costs down. Next up, let's get into the engine and drivetrain. The XR150L has a 149.2cc air-cooled 15-degree 2-valve single overhead cam single cylinder engine that pumps out 12.1 horsepower at 7,750 RPM and 9.2 foot-pounds of torque at 6,000 RPM. So yeah, she's no rocket ship, but it does put out a few more horsepower over Honda's more expensive Minimoto 125cc motorcycles, and here's how it stacks up against some other models in the lineup too. The real kicker though is how fuel efficient it is, with a rating of 124 miles per gallon, and if you pair that up with its 2.8 gallon fuel tank, you've got a range of about 346 miles before you're pushing it. However, some people are going to have a problem with how that fuel is delivered. Why? Well, we're heading back to the 1900s this time, and it's for the 22mm carburetor that Honda has slapped on this thing. Now, we could debate the pros and cons of fuel injection and carburetors until we're all blue in the face, but most of you would fall asleep quicker than you already have. Wake up! So we'll move on to the XR150L top speed and what those performance numbers can deliver. When it comes to the average person, you're going to be able to hit 55 to 65 miles per hour. And of course, if you're a featherweight and or pushing it off a cliff, you might be able to click off a bit more. We need to put all of that power to the ground though, and doing that is a 5-speed manual transmission with a normal motorcycle gear pattern, unlike some of Honda's mini bikes that will be cross-shopped against this XR, while having a 17 and 49 2 sprocket setup that's helping to turn its 428 chain. Now let's bounce around the bike and touch on a few different things. Storage, do you have any? Nope. But that's where your cargo rack out back comes in handy to strap stuff down, and that also ties us into our next segment, accessories. As you've got a few XR150L accessories from Honda, like a tank bag and saddlebags to give you somewhere to toss your stuff while riding. Plus you've got their skid plate that we mentioned earlier, a 12-volt accessory socket and handguards too, and if those don't tickle your fancy, you've got a million different accessories from aftermarket companies around the world to help you fine-tune this platform into something that suits your needs. Now, how about electronics and rider controls? Well, she's pretty basic.
Excuse me?
But that's a good thing here, as it makes everything very easy to wrap your head around at first glance, unlike a lot of bikes nowadays with Bluetooth this and an app for that, and so on. That simplicity carries over to the controls as well, with them being just like any standard motorcycle out there, so hopping on and familiarizing yourself with the controls won't take but a second, thanks to not having a million different rider aids and modes to flip through. And when it comes to lighting, you won't find LED lights all around the bike, but instead just your basic halogen setup, but hey, it gets the job done. To loop back around to the controls real quick though, I don't know if it's just me, but I absolutely hate the rubber inserts on these foot pegs. I know, they help with vibrations and all that fun stuff, but for me, they put my feet at such a weird angle. The first time I hopped on it, all I could think was,
no, that can't be right.
So I had to go check and see if they were installed properly, and yep, they were. And come to find out, the first few XR150Ls my local dealer has sold, all the new owners threw different pegs on there right away, so maybe it's not just me. And now I'm curious, what do you guys think about the new Honda XR150L? And if you're curious as to why I say new like that, it's because this isn't technically a new model, but rather a new model introduction for the USA. It's been sold in multiple countries for quite a few years now, and is something that Sundiro Honda in China had a hand in manufacturing and put together in Mexico, just like the super cheap $1,807 Honda NAVi that was sold around the world for years before it landed here in the States. With that being said though, what do you guys think about what it brings to the table for less than $3,000? Honda does pay attention to these videos, so let your voices be heard down in the comments section and let's talk about it all, as these videos aren't just for me to ramble on. But on that note, thanks for watching, and if you'd like to help support the future of these videos, please check out those support links below to help keep the future of this channel alive. And a huge thank you again to our channel members and supporters for helping to keep this train chugging along, and we'll see you guys in the next one.